Hello, all my dear class 6 students. A very good morning. Welcome to your online biology class. So, after vacation, this is your first biology class, I guess, no? So, the topic, the chapter we will be discussing today, it's flower, obviously the flower. So, today our topic will be types of flower. How many types are there in flower? In the basis of male and female reproductive parts. Okay. So, flowers are basically of two types. It's bisexual flower and unisexual flower. What is bisexual flower? Which possesses both the male part, that means androecium, and female part. Okay, that means gynoecium. We have already discussed that flower has two parts, male part and female parts. Male part is androecium and female part is gynoecium. Okay. So, in the case of bisexual flower, we can see they have male part and female part both. That means androecium and gynoecium both. So, the example of bisexual flowers: rose, hibiscus. These are the examples of bisexual flower. And now we will come to the point unisexual flower. What is unisexual flower? Which possesses either male part, that means either androecium, or female parts, that means gynoecium. So, papaya flower is an example of unisexual flower. Okay. So, that has been clear that unisexual flower have only either have male part, that means androecium, or female part, that means gynoecium. So, papaya flower is example of unisexual flower. Clear? Now, we will come to the point functions of a flower. Which are the functions? Which is the work of a flower in a plant body that we have to see now. Okay? So, if anyone asks to us that what is the main work of flower, we have to say at first which will be the main point. In this case, we have to say that reproduction. Reproduction is to give birth a new plant body is the main work of flower. Like a flower serves an important function in plants, as you can see in the page number 21, point functions of a flower, as a reproductive part. It ensures the continuation of a species by the process is called reproduction. So, in the case of functions of a flower, which will be the main point is reproduction. Okay? Right? So, the first step for achieving this is pollination, and the second step is fertilization. So, students, make it clear that reproduction has two steps, okay, are pollination and first step is pollination and second step is fertilization. Okay, you can see the 2 points, both points, pollination and fertilization. So, in pollination, now we will be discussing the point pollination. For the formation of seeds, the pollen grains produced in the anther must be transferred to the stigma of a pistil. This process, the process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of same type of plant is known as the pollination. So, we all know that formation of seeds takes place in the anther. Okay, that means pollen grains. No, pollen grains. The first stage of a seed is pollen grain. No, so pollen grain is produced in the anther that must be transferred to the stigma of pistil. What is the stigma of pistil? You can see here this part. This one is the stigma of pistil. The shape of a stigma is like this. No. So, this is the stigma of pistil. So, in the case of pollination, the pollen grains must be transferred to the part stigma of pistil on either the same flower or another flower of the same type of plants. Okay, it is called the pollination. So, the pollination is the process of transferring of pollen grains. Okay, it occurs naturally or by means of some external agents such as wind, water and insects. Now we will come to the point types of pollination. There are basically two types of pollination. There are basically two types of pollination. There are basically two types of pollination. One is self-pollination and another is cross-pollination. So, now we will be discussing the point is self-pollination. When the pollen grains from an anther of a flower transfer to the stigma of same flower or another flower of the same plant, it is termed as self-pollination. The self-pollination occurs naturally. Okay. So, when the pollen grains are transferring from an anther to a stigma of the same flower or different flower of the same plant, okay, it is called the self-pollination, and this self-pollination basically occurs naturally. Now, we will come to the point cross-pollination. When the pollen grains are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same type, okay, this is termed as cross-pollination. It occurs through external agents. Okay. So, these are the now we will be discussing about the agents of cross-pollination. Cross-pollination takes place by various external agents like wind, water, insects, pollination by wind. Okay, now we will be discussing the point pollination by wind, how the pollination is taking place by the wind. Some plants like maize and wheat have dry and light pollen grains produced in a large quantity. As the flowers of these plants get matured, pollen grains are blown away by the wind. Some of these pollen grains fall on the stigma of a flower of the same time, thus resulting in pollination. Okay. Now, we will be discussing the point pollination by water. In some aquatic plants, pollination by water, because there is the term water, that has to be cleared, that means this pollination by water is taking place in the plants like aquatic plants. Okay. In some aquatic plants like Hydrilla and Vallisneira, the male flowers are completely submerged in water. On maturity, they get detached and float on the surface of water. The female flower, that has a long stalk also floats on the surface of water. When a male flower moving with the water current comes in contact with the female flower, the pollen grains fall onto the stigma, thus leading to the pollination. This is the process how the pollination by water is taking place. So, we have to learn it, we have to read it very carefully and very elaborately, because this is gonna help us in next chapter, in next all the chapters, which is based on the plants. Okay. So, students, for today, that's it. Next day we will be discussing the points pollination by insects, and we will jump to the point fertilization. We will learn how the fertilization is taking place. Okay. Thank you so much for attending the class, students. Bye bye.